Sweet Celestia, she's drunk. Blackness. Never ending. Absolute. Unyielding. And then there was light. I found myself lying naked on a strange mattress in a strange room. A dingy and cramped room that smelled of wax and hay. "Easy," said a male next to me in the bed. "Don't panic." That was an incredibly stupid thing to say, because this seemed like an ideal time to panic. I opened my eyes, took in what looked like some sort of basement, lit by a few candles, and dressed in the usual wasteland decor, and immediately kicked the male beside me. I still had my pip buck, so I entered SATs and queued up 3 telekinetic bullets at the black unicorn. Maybe it was all the sickness, injury, and disappointment I'd suffered, but for some reason I hesitated and used the moment of frozen time to get a better look at my captor. I didn't know exactly what to expect. Ravenous raider? Blisterous and bloated bounty hunter? Downgraded deus? Okay, definitely not the last one. He looked, in fact, quite ordinary. His black coat sported numbers of thin scars all across his body. Mane was dirty white, tail too. He wore no barding, and I couldn't see a gun. In fact, the pip-buck said he was non-hostile yellow. His cutie mark was a strange outline of a pegasus with hooves stretched above her wings, and her wings spread wide, surrounded by a sunburst of rays of light. I'd almost blown the head off of a completely unarmed, non-hostile buck. I could hear the bony bastard shuffling his cards in the back of my mind. When time resumed, I flopped back onto my seat and took a shaking breath. "Right, don't panic. Who's panicking? Me? Psh, I kill monsters and slay slavers. No panic here." I grinned like an idiot. He looked at me with definite concern. I took a deep breath and thrust out my hoof. "I'm Blackjack. Nice to meet you." "Priest," he said. "Likewise." Priest, huh? What were the odds that he was religious? "So, a few standard questions I'd like to ask when I wake up in a strange bed next to some pony," I said, and then cleared my throat. "Where am I? Where are my friends? Where are my clothes? Where's the bathroom? Was I good? Is this going to get back to my mother?" Then I blinked and added another one. "And why do I feel better?" I still felt on the battered and bruised side of life, but the Celestia fucked my spine with a power drill pain was gone. To my relief, he smiled. Maybe not laughed, but smiled. If I ran into another stoic buck, I was going to shoot him on principle. Maybe not kill him, but he was getting shot. That's quite a list. Does this happen often? Oh, after the last couple of days? Yeah, it's become policy. All right. First question. You were in chapel. Then his lips curled. "But, of course, you already knew that from your pip-buck." I did. Fuck. I tried to look nonchalantly down at the screen. "Naturally, you're testing my honesty." "Of course. That's it precisely," I said softly before glancing down at the navigation tool. Sure enough. Oh, Celestia, how did I get way over here? Chapel was right across the river from the southwestern side of Hoof. That should have been 2 days walking at least. How long was I out? Why was I out? I love answering questions, but if you keep tacking them on, we're never going to get out of bed, he said with an arch of his brow. And I don't know about you, but I am hungry. He had to admit that I was pretty hungry too. Ravenous, in fact. Walking ahead of me, he opened the cellar doors and stepped out into a drizzle. Did it ever stop raining in the Hoof? Chapel consisted of 4 or 5 small buildings, circumcised by a wooden picket fence. Each house had raised growing beds covered by tarps and canvas sheets. The the post office across the street seemed to hold most of the life in the town, as I saw several young mares stroll inside. In fact, the ponies caring for the vegetables were young too. Aside from the priest, I didn't see a single adult anywhere. Okay. Then I spotted a raggedy blue flag with a rearing white filly, fluttering weakly in the breeze. Oh, Crusaders! This is where the Crusaders live? Then I winced. Oh, yeah, adding to the list. You must have quite a collection of questions already, he replied with a chuckle. You have no idea. As for your second question about your friends, you were found alone, so I'm afraid I don't know where they are. That brought me short. What? I felt... I'm not sure how I felt. It was like all of a sudden 2 pieces of my insides had been yanked up into my throat. Oh, shit. Horse apples? I amended, looking at the black unicorn and giving a small smile. Yeah, that was the best I could fake. Hopefully I'd hidden at least some of the extent of my distress. His amusement shifted to concern. I'm sorry. When the Crusaders found you, you were unconscious and alone. They recognized your security barding and carried you here. That patch convinced them. Not many ponies wear Crusader patches. Unfortunately, your equipment was more than they could carry, and they had to hide it there instead. So as for your clothes, they're back where they found you, besides the tracks. He arched a brow. Do you really need to go to the bathroom? No, and you don't need to answer if I was decent or about my mom. Stupid questions, I muttered. My friends were gone. Dead? Oh, why did I just think that? My head felt like I was looking into the sky. I sat down hard on my rump. Shit, sorry. Are you not supposed to swear around clergy ponies? I admit I hadn't liked Stable 99's spiritual leader. She went around killing fun faster than the security ponies did, but I respected her. It wasn't easy addressing the worries of a few hundred necrotic mares. Glory was just... She was starting to talk to me, opening up. I didn't feel like crying. I didn't feel angry. There was just this hole where she'd been that was now filled with great unknown. She told me about her teacher, and her ideas about what causes raiders, and there was more. Priest just gave me an understanding smile as he waited. And P21. I called him insane. I'd said he was a murderer for setting up the execution of the mine boss. He'd been mad, angry. I'd hurt him, and I don't think I apologized. And then there were Sakashi and her child. I've got to find them. I have to. What happened? I asked as I stood looking at him. The Crusaders found you by some train tracks up to the north. You were alone with your belongings scattered. I noted your injuries, but I suspect the culprit was this. He tugged a ragged plastic baggie from his saddlebags to his mouth, a memory orb glowing softly within. I reached out my magic, but he tugged the bag back and muttered, "Don't," around the mouthful. He dropped it at his hooves. It's trapped. How do you trap a memory orb? Carefully. When the war was at its peak, memories could no longer be left accessible to any unicorn that happened across them. Zebras had unicorn sympathizers. The Ministry of Morale, together with the Ministry of Peace, eventually devised methods of extracting and sealing dangerous or sensitive memories away. The process was so difficult that it was used only for the most critical of information. But with constant zebra infiltration and sabotage, the technique of locking memories became vital here. Too many secrets in this city. He nudged the orb with a hoof as he looked down at it. It has a password, some thought or idea, or name that you need to be thinking of. And if you don't have the password? I asked, looking at the orb like it was a bomb. He shook his head and sighed. Most of the time, nothing. But if you try to force contact, it can render you unconscious, place you in an endless nightmare, even kill you. What the fuck? Kill me? Are you serious? How can a memory orb kill me? Your mind resides in your brain. And your brain keeps your heart beating. I've never encountered such an orb, but I've heard of them. Yeah, okay. No more memories for me, I murmured. kicking the little bag away from me. "Don't say that," he replied with a small frown, walking to it and returning it to me. He looked sad. "Please, don't say that. Memories are more than experiences. They're lessons. They teach us things that others have gone through." He cocked his head. "Is there any sense in suffering through the past twice? Have you not learned something from an orb?" I sighed and looked away. I would have never seen the stars with my own eyes, those beautiful little gems in all that black. Would I know love if I never had it breaking in another mare's heart? Or seen the courage and valor of ponies long dead? I guess. "Forewarned is forearmed," he said calmly. "Fortunately, I'm decent with a number of spells and was able to disconnect you from the orb. I also took advantage of your unconsciousness to heal you with magic." Wait, this was magic? I've been slogging down magical healing potions right and left, and I've never felt like this. Well, that wasn't true. The regeneration talisman had done a dandy job on me. How long have I been out? I feel like I've been sleeping for a week. Aside from the lingering soreness between my shoulders, I felt ready to hunt down my friends. "A few hours. So, you don't know what happened about the innervation?" he asked, as his horn floated 2 healing potions out of his bags. One was a typical watery purple, the other looked as vivid as wet paint. "That's one of those 10-cap words I never picked up in the stable," I replied, pointing a hoof at the bright purple vial. "What's that one? A super mega healing potion?" "Maybe I could get it when I found a P21. He chuckled. "Comparatively, perhaps, but they're both the same kind of potion. The fainter potion is simply a week older." "Wait, so what happened to it? The enervation thing?" I guessed and felt pleased when he nodded. Miracles of miracles. Could I be learning? During the war, there were countless projects and studies. All of the strange energies and magics scarred the landscape, even before the bombs fell. There's contamination deep within the very soil of Hoofington. For miles around the city, the enervation saps the life and magic out of any living thing. In some places, there are enervation fields strong enough to kill a pony. You won't see a thing. You'll simply start to die. Seeing my horrified expression, he added, "Your best defense is to get away as quickly as possible." Dying from bullets and raiders and monstrous vermin was one thing, but now I had to worry about keeling over from invisible magic. "Can my pip-buck detect it? Is there an enervation sensor on this thing?" I said as I waved it at him. "No, but since the enervation saps healing magic, keep an eye on your healing potions. If they go clear, that means the enervations drained them enough to make them useless. If the potion starts turning other colors, gets cloudy, or starts to smell, run and lose the potions. They'd only make you sick. And if you start bleeding from head to hoof, get away." "Why does any pony actually live here?" I asked, then glared at the towers of Hoofington. The blackened spires and scorched walls seemed to ask the same question. From the green light glowing from the depths of the city, it felt almost as if the broken towers had a special loathing of any pony within 100 miles. "Why do you think life is so tough and desperate here? Almost any pony who can leave the hoof does. Those who can't live in the safest pockets they can find. But there are also great opportunities to be had here. Weapons and armor, lost technology, mineral wealth, secrets. Things worth risking lives for, apparently. Some ponies came thinking they'd strike it big. Then they got cut at the hoof, an infection, and wondered why their healing potions no longer work. The strong prey on the weak, and the land dies a little more each day." He bowed his head solemnly. Celestia protects, Luna defends. Do they? I didn't see it. I never saw it. In 99, Hymnal usually went on and on about how Celestia was appointed the Overmare and how we should have faith in the Overmare. That questioning the Overmare was like questioning the divine princesses themselves. I'd seen exactly what came of that kind of blind loyalty. It's just... I hate discovering one bad thing after the next. First it was a raider disease, then magical radiation poisoning, now it's trapped memory orbs and invisible death zones. Hoofington needs an instruction guide for idiots like me, with big print and bright colorful letters. I stomped my hooves hard, then noticed his smile. What? Why didn't I have this a week ago? I murmured, as I lay it on a mattress on the floor of the post office. In front of me was an open copy of The Wasteland Survival Guide, Hoofington edition. Dangers of scavenging. What's that beeping noise? Robots and you. The who's who of the hoof. Information that would have come in handy over the past few days lay right before my eyes. This should be stapled outside every stable for any hornhead that goes racing out in the wasteland. While I did want to track down P-21, Glory, and Shikashi, Priest had pointed out that my friends knew I was coming in this direction. Chapel being the only community near the rail line, it was a good bet they'd come here if they could. If we all were wandering about looking for each other, we might never find one another. As I read the book, I told him what I could. He'd proven a wonderful listener and conversationalist, as I had outlearned my first few days to him. An inner voice, sounding very much like P-21, murmured that he was probably a fool-fondling cannibal who sacrificed ponies to his idols of Celestia and Luna. It seemed impossible that the wasteland would allow some pony nice to exist. The Crusaders had proven to be quite curious about me. Why was I laying beside the tracks? Was I a super mutant raider bandit wasteland walker who could shoot death beams from my glowing eyes? Where was I from? Sugar apple bombs or sugar carrot cakes? Which side was I on? Dolls or Colts and robbers? Did I lose my mama too? More than 20 foals were at the post office, which had been made part rec room, part hotel. Toys scavenged and manufactured by the young ponies lay everywhere. It was a bit of a trick not to slip and bust a leg. Would you have taken the time to read it? He asked with a chuckle. As I recall, you had a Horse of the Apocalypse after you at the time. I don't think I'd stop and grab a book with Deus Ex after me. I glanced at him curiously. You know about Deus? Most ponies know of Deus Ex Machina. The name's zebra speak for God of the Machine. And yes, he gave it to himself. He's been around the hoof. The black unicorn frowned for a moment in consideration before continuing. For as long as I can remember. He's the Reaper's Reaper, the Raider God, number 2 in the arena, behind Big Daddy Reaper. I found the section about Big Daddy Reaper and the arena. The old photograph of the Hoofington Sports Arena dominated most of the article. Reapers. Your best friend, or else. You see that pony? Not the one foaming at the mouth. That's a raider. Not the one with the nice explosive collars. That's a slaver. Not the one taking all your stuff. That's a bandit. No. That pony. The pony's so badass, over the top, amazing looking, that you're sure he's going to kill you with a glare. That's a reaper. Reapers have been in Hoofington since before there was a wasteland. The stadium was home to the Hoofington Reapers, and that's where Big Daddy took the name from. What kind of ponies are Reapers? Well, before the bombs, the Hoofington Reapers hoofball team claimed the records for most consecutive injuries, fouls, and penalties in the EHL, and they were proud of it. That's not to say Reapers kill every pony on sight, but they are very good at it. The only ways to become a Reaper are to kill a Reaper in one-on-one combat, or to win against a dozen of wannabes at a tryout. So whatever Reaper you're meeting is probably more badass than the Reaper they replaced. That means they're almost certainly tougher than you. In their odd way, Reapers are celebrities of Hoofington. Lots of ponies have a favorite like Deus, Rampage, or Psychoshy. The discussions of their various fights can usually be found across Hoofington. Reaper matches are one of the few forms of entertainment Hoofingtonites actually get to enjoy. So if you meet Mr. Reaper Pony, be polite. Do what he asks. Pray that he's gentle. Because if you cross a Reaper, you have just invited an entire world of hurt on yourself. I was about to ask if shooting a Reaper with ceiling-mounted artillery counted as crossing when a light pink filly, no, make that a colt, approached us. "Excuse me, priesty, but there's pilgrims come to the chapel." His cutie mark was making me thirsty. The priest looked solemn at the news. "How many, Sparkle Cola?" "3. None our age." The colt replied. "Thanks Celestia for small favors," he said and rose to his hooves with a deep sigh. He smiled at me. "Sorry, I really should see to them." "Is anything the matter? Can I help?" I asked as I sat up. His smile was tinged with sadness. "You just did by asking. But no, this is my burden to bear. You should go on reading. The more you know, the better prepared you are." He walked out, his head hanging slightly. "Shouldn't he be glad to have pilgrims? I mean, that's a good thing, right?" I asked Sparkle Cola, but the colt with the spoofy soda-brown mane gave me a stable ponies ask stupid questions look, and returned to his friends. I sighed, looking back at the book. Quickly, I started flipping through the wrinkled pages, trying to find... There it was. Chapel, a small community located on the Philadelphia Turnpike outside of the core, noted as a place for troubled ponies to find peace. Home of Hoofington's Crusaders. See page 56. I flipped to the cover, looking at the author's name below the pony skull picture. "Thanks, Ditsy-Doo," I murmured sourly, then blinked. On the wall was a faded poster, intact only because of a glass pane covering it. A gray mare with a yellow, walleyed expression goggled at me with a stack of envelopes in her mouth. The caption beneath read, "Sign up with the Equestrian Mail Service. Ditsy-Doo needs your help." I couldn't help but find the Pegasus with bubbles on her butt as incredibly cute. It had to be a coincidence. Ponies didn't live for 2 centuries in the wasteland. Not without becoming monsters. It wasn't possible. I looked at the book again, and started looking through the earlier pages. There was a short section near the front on other famous wasteland locations, with a few paragraphs of text for each entry and the advice to get a non-Hoofington edition copy of the guide if you are planning to leave the city. Most of it I skimmed over, but the entry for Canterlot caught my eye. "Once the capital of Equestria, Canterlot and the surrounding area should now be avoided as every pony who isn't a Canterlot ghoul and doesn't have really good reason to be there. The city wasn't hit by any balefire, but it is where the good news ends. The zebras detonated a megaspell inside the city that sent a pink cloud laced with really, really nasty magic. Princess Celestia and Luna were in the city at the time, and put an enormous magical bubble around the city to trap the cloud inside, probably saving much of Equestria from suffering the same fate as the capital. Sadly, and I'm sorry if you are just leaving a stable and haven't heard this yet, the pink cloud trapped and still building inside the bubble was enough to kill even them. While many of us believe that Celestia and Luna live on in another form, their bodies died with Canterlot. The ruins of the city are filled with the cloud to this day, as the area under the city that was drenched by cloud-infused water when the bubble failed, and both are filled with feral Canterlot ghouls. If you never found a Canterlot ghoul before, try to keep that way. They're extremely hard to kill, and very dangerous. If you really must visit the city, I'm afraid that, through a general guide, includes more information you need, there's no edition of the guide specifically for the area. The ruins are still mostly unexplored. My advice to you is to find a non-feral Canterlot ghoul guide. but that's not likely to be easy. I leaned back. I hadn't really expected the princesses to be alive, of course. If they had been, they'd have been doing something. Helping ponies. If they'd been alive, how could they have allowed the wasteland to exist? On the other hoof, though, it was hard to wrap my head around them really being killed. I'd never really been into history or religion in '99, but still, they were goddesses. Of course, their physical deaths hadn't stopped people like priests. I sat there for a few moments, staring into space. Eventually, though, I sat forward and started flipping through the book again. What had happened 2 centuries ago didn't really matter much now. I supposed, and however dead the princesses really were, they certainly didn't seem to want to help the wasteland in a noticeable way. I turned back to the section on places to go, places to avoid. Megamart. Been there. Stockyard, Iron Mare. Only if you have ranger business. Elysium, Flank. Only ponies 18 and over. Hoofington, you. The Arena, at your own risk. Meat Locker, and Paradise. I was a little amused to see Paradise listed as both a place to go and to avoid. Apparently, the Fluttershy Medical Center and the Rainbow Dash Skyport were safe, salvage places. Most of the places to avoid had vague names and not much else. A few I knew. Pony Joe's. Any Pony Joe's, apparently. Raiders seemed drawn to them. Brimstone Fall was on here, too. I wondered if someday I'd pop over to the place to go side. I really hoped so. No Ponies Land. Boneyard had a high feral ghoul warning. If I'd read this long ago, would Scoodle still be alive? Because I would have believed the book more than her. There were other places, though, that a little more than a list of names to me. Broom Ink Refinery, Black Pony Mountain, the Luna Space Center and Museum, the Hoofington Dam, and Robronco Headquarters. Just to name a few. What surprised me the most was the section marked The Core. So, you want to go to the core? Think you'll nip in, get some super tech, get out, and be rolling in caps? It's in the center of the city, right? It's still standing. It's got to be the motherlode of wonders unimagined. It probably is. Because every single living pony that's tried to get into the core has died. Every single one. There are some places in Equestria you don't go. Canterlot, the Badlands, Splendid Valley. Do not go to these places. They are too toxic, too infested, or too radioactive to inhabit. The core of Hoofington is different. It is all of the above, plus a designed death trap. I know because I tried going there myself. I made it in as far as the wall, and I've probably only met one pony who can say the same. Automated energy turrets nearly vaporized me. Pegasus robot drones scrambled. If I hadn't gone for a swim, I'd have ended up as a dusty ghoulie. And for you ghouls who think radiation is another pony's problem, there are energies in that place that'll remind you of your death. I felt it sucking out, I don't know, my mind? My soul? Yes, that is how dangerous the core is. So don't go. There are lots of other thrilling and exciting places in the wasteland to explore, places that aren't guaranteed to kill you by simple proximity. Turn down the forbidden treasures and have a nice and happy life. It was stupid, but for some reason her warning made me want to go even more. I wondered if there was some way to neutralize the defenses. A sniper like that black unicorn I'd seen at McIntosh's Marauders. Maybe Gun could be... what was wrong with me? The very magic of that place was deadly. There was something so tempting about the word forbidden. Forbidden. Not to this, little Miss Blackjack. I'm being an idiot, I groaned as I stood up and gave myself a good shake. That's the problem with reading stuff. It puts unhealthy ideas in your head. I closed the guide, glancing again at the poster on the wall. One dusty ghoulie. Really? I trotted over to the customer service desk, which doubled as a store for the Crusaders. 1 sugar apple bombs and a sparkle cola, please, I said to the young filly. 35 caps, lady, she said as she dug around behind the counter. I blinked. Don't you think that's a little expensive for some cereal and a soda? Nope, she countered as she put them on the counter and then covered them with her hooves. That's highway robbery. 25 caps? She looked at me flatly. Oh, so I'm a robber, huh? 40 caps. 40? That's not how you haggle. Go find your sugar apples someplace else then, she said as she pulled them back behind the counter. I took a deep breath and gave a polite smile. Hun, it's just 2 little things. I'm security. I gotta save money to buy bullets and guns and take out things with the bad ponies, I said with a grin. Her eyes got big. Her smile got wide. You got the money to buy guns and stuff? 75. I murmured about how the little extortion artist should intern for a bottle cap as the filly put the goods back on the counter. I reached back with my magic for my caps. Reached back. I looked back and remembered all my stuff was hidden out on some rail line or something. I looked back at the filly with a wide smile. Put it on my tab? My growling stomach added, please. Forget bottle cap. That filly should study under Ulcery. She had a heart of stacked caps. I'd at least gotten her to agree to spread the word to the other Crusaders to keep Glory, P-21, and Sakashi from following me till I returned. She also attempted to sell me the location of my stuff for 50 caps, even after I pointed out that I didn't have any money with me. This didn't bother her in the slightest. I'd owe her when I get back. Of course, as soon as she told me, even though I had no idea where the shed she talked about was, there was instantly a little toggle on my pip-buck telling me where to go. With no roads, I figured I'd climb up a low hill and get the lay of the land. So I turned on DJ Pony. With some luck, I might hear something about my friends. DJ seemed to have a thing for heroines. I imagined he didn't get out much. Atop the hill to the north, I looked just past the still falling drizzle at the little community beside the turnpike. And just past the post office along the road to Hoofington, I saw what had to be the chapel's chapel. The building was set back behind a low ridge, so I couldn't make out more of the steeple and long roof. It didn't have quite the same level of neglect as the rest of the buildings. It actually looked as if some pony had painted it in the last decade. Play. Fucking stop it, brain! I'm sick of it! Still, I felt my pulse spike and my head throb. I had to take a few deep breaths as I looked over at the core of Hoofington. That Steel Ranger acolyte had called the city a fortress. Now I realized exactly what she meant. Hoofington hadn't just been the R&D heart of Equestria's war effort. It had also been, in many ways, the primary target. The city had been built to withstand any attack. Gray walls of concrete rose around the slathered moat of the Hoofington River. The towering buildings behind the wall had no windows facing out. They'd forsaken a view of the outside in return for greater security. I couldn't imagine an uglier city. I honestly couldn't imagine any ponies actually wanting to live there. Hills rose to the south of Hoofington, but they were dwarfed by a massive, nearly sheer-sided piece of granite rising from the southern end of the core island, Mount Hoof. Atop the giant rock, there was another huge, tapered concrete tower, and from the cliff stretching a wall of concrete as tall as the miniature mountain. The great curved wall stretched across the mouth of a wide valley to meet another small tower built into the steep hillside on the other side of the valley. And from the base of the wall flowed the branch of the Hoofington River that flowed along the western shore of the core island. I could make out an immense, erratically spotted relief of a unicorn. No, it had wings, too. It had to be an image of one of the princesses carved into the concrete. Given the pockmarks the dam had received, I couldn't guess which princess it was supposed to be. One of the Hoofington dams, I supposed. but my pipbuck apparently wasn't close enough to pluck its name out of the aether. The lights still glowed atop the dam, atop that certain wall surrounded by core, and on the ugly pillar-like buildings. If you overlooked the green glow of radiation and the cracks and leaning towers, you might almost imagine ponies living in that damned city. I looked away. I wasn't getting any closer to my stuff by standing on this hill. It was getting a little dark, but with my eyes that didn't mean much. I pretty much navigated by pipbuck anyway, keeping the little blinking icon straight ahead of me to the north. What I didn't expect was for my pipbuck to chirp with a new location marker. Beyond the dead trees and thorny gray bushes rose a single large square building. 4 round pillars were wrapped with dissected vines, and even with my mutant eyesight I couldn't make out the letters over the door. Fortunately, my pipbuck supplied the location. Hoovington Museum of Natural History. I had told the Crusaders I'd be going straight to get my stuff and then back. But honestly, walking alone in just my coat didn't sit well with me. Besides, I had a 10,000 cap goal to attain. If there was something useful within, maybe I could see if I could find it. The front doors were reinforced, and from the scorch marks it looks as if some pony had tried to blast their way in. Well, so much for that idea. I picked my way around the corner, saw a clear path north past the building, and turned my mind back to retrieving my stuff. As I passed the next corner, though, I happened to glance at the back wall of the building. There was a concrete loading dock in the back, the remains of a wagon full of decaying boxes still sitting there partially unloaded. Or loaded? I couldn't tell. Apart from that, rusty tin cans and scrap metal were all that remained of the concrete pad. And bones, of course. There wasn't a wasteland without bones. I walked up the loading dock's back door, where another unicorn skeleton huddled against the metal. There was a tiny cardboard box in its hoof. I lifted it and gave it a shake, looking at the 2 slightly rusted bobby pins. I looked up at the scratched-up lock. P21 had explained the procedure of picking a lock to me. He'd even demonstrated it once or twice. I didn't have a screwdriver, but maybe magic would do. I smiled as I recalled his calm, serious voice. It's half feeling and half listening. You just keep the right angle, tap it against a pin just so, and twist. I'd gotten through 5 of his bobby pins before he'd taken over and opened the medical box. Now I had just 2. Half feeling, half listening, I tapped and scraped, listening to the tiny ticks of the pins inside the lock. My horn glowed as I rotated the lock and felt it jam. A moment later, the bobby pin snapped in 2. I sighed, glaring at the lock. P21 made this look so easily. I realized more and more how much I depended on him. I needed my friends. I moved the pin into a slightly lower angle, and instead of twisting all at once, I stopped the instant I felt the lock struggle. Twist the pin a little more, rotate, and I stared in amazement as the lock clicked. Hope for me after all, I said as I slipped inside. Though, given that I'm breaking and entering, or trespassing, I wonder if I'll have to bust myself, I murmured as I paused. In a glance back out across the dark lot of the weeds and sickly trees, I thought I saw something. Was it? No. That was crazy. I glanced at my EFS. Yellow bar? I slowly took a step forward, then another. My amber eyes pierced the darkness to make out a vaguely pony-shaped object. A horn? Wings? No way. I whispered. Then, with a flash, it disappeared. I sat there for the longest time, just wondering what it was that I'd seen. Because I knew I couldn't have just seen Princess Luna. Could I? I thumped my temples and closed my eyes. No, that wasn't possible. They couldn't still be around, and if they were, they wouldn't be playing peekaboo with a security mare out for a midnight stroll. They'd be fixing things. I sighed, looking at where they had vanished. Just don't think about it, Blackjack. Suiting the action to the word and putting it out of my mind, I slipped into the storeroom in the back of the museum. There were tons of boxes, but nothing that looked as if it could really count as valuable, though I looked closer. Yes, bullet holes. There were bullet holes in a closed-up museum. I couldn't smell any cordite, so I guessed that these weren't recent additions. So what was with all the red bars on my EFS? One of the skeletons wore workers' coveralls. I carefully removed the bones and wiggled into the clothing. Pockets. Pockets were good. Guns would be better. Few things were better than guns. Oh, healing potions. And sugar apple bombs. Personally, I doubted I'd find any of them here. After all, what did they keep in a museum besides crates and crates of boring? More bones? Bullet casings? Small caliber automatics? Small machine guns? Old, though, and covered in dust. I checked the bones for signs of bullet impacts. Yes, somebody had shot these workers a long time back. Great. Security arriving 200 years after a multiple murder. Speaking of murder, it looked like Softheart had finally caught her main. MOM victorious. 4-year murder spree comes to an end, was the headline of the paper beside one of the bodies. The Ministry of Morale reports that numerous murders, known as the Angel of Death, has been apprehended by the MOM officers. The Angel of Death is believed to be responsible for over 20 full slayings over the last 4 years, with many cases unaccounted for. While her identity has not been released, Ministry officials have declared that she is an evil, wicked, no good, very bad pony, and we're going to make sure that she can't do it anymore. Huh. Who would have thought the Ministry of Morale had cops? I thought they only threw parties. The success came at a terrible price, however, as Officer Softheart was critically injured in the arrest. Ministry of Peace officials refused to disclose her condition. The Angel's first victim was... Suddenly, I noticed one red bar moving back and forth much faster than the others. I straightened, wondering what it could be. Feral zombie child out for an outing? Killer robot sentries? A 2-century-old mummy glad to finally have some pony to eat? Bring it on! Then a particularly large bug scurried into view, waving its antenna at me. Ew, I said flatly, feeling slightly disappointed as I looked at the large bug and stomped my hoof hard. It gave a satisfying crunch. I was not going to angst or panic over squishing bugs. I found the break room and rummaged through things a little. Some pre-war bits earned me a sunrise sarsaparilla from the vending machine. I missed the carroty goodness of Sparkle Cola. And, really, what was a little radiation? I tried my horn at picking the lock to the simple medical kit. Success on the lock, but the healing potions were a pale lilac. Not good. Then I really scored. A half-empty bottle of Wild Pegasus bourbon in a locker. Some pony's been naughty, I said as I swirled the bottle before my eyes. The smart thing would have been to save it later, but fortunately I was not a smart pony. I proceeded further into the display section of the museum with a warm glow in my gut. Moving to the next room, I emerged with a large central hall and foyer. More bones. More bullet holes and shell casings. What the hey happened here? As I walked, the emergency lights began to flicker. There was a static crackle in the air, and music began to fade in and out as the automated system struggled to play some sort of light and airy melody. The skeleton of a dragon posed in the entrance rotunda menaced patrons. I wasn't impressed. As I touched the front doors, there was a buzz overhead, and an automated voice said, "I'm sorry, patron. The museum is currently under temporary lockdown. Please contact in security." I am security, I said as I looked at the open doors of the sides of the atrium. Slightly put out that I hadn't yet found anything particularly useful or valuable. Rocks in Equestria. Pass. Come on. Where was the Guns of Equestria exhibit? Batons of the Ages? I wondered aloud as I stepped down the side hall and into an exhibit. The emergency lighting flickered to life as I stepped closer. The Hoofington River was first colonized ago by nomadic zebra tribes. Although their exact numbers are unknown, they eventually established some sort of the oldest communities in However, due to mysterious circumstances, the hoof was abandoned by all inhabitants. Equinologists hypothesize that a volcanic event may have led to a catastrophic primitive tribal communities. Other experts suspect a spread of unknown caused by population crash. I looked at the smashed display case. They hadn't been looted, but the contents hadn't aged well. Torn woven baskets and smashed clay jars lay in abundance all over the floor. There were pictures on the wall that were either faded by or eaten away by mildew. I saw one diorama of a potential ancient zebra settlement, still protected inside of its case. A tiny magical volcano puffed wispy smoke rings out as it loomed over the zebra settlement at its base. I picked up a zebra spear, only to have it crumble in my magic grip. It was just a wooden replica. There was a picture of a zebra with red stripes being pelted with rocks and sticks, with a caption above, "Red stripes, the mark of shame." Moving to the next room, I was struck by the image of a white unicorn wearing leather barding and a helmet, and levitating a brass spyglass before his face. The entire dramatic effect was spoiled as the statue lying on its side next to the base it should have been mounted on. The lights flickered to life. The first equestrian explorers to reach Hoofington lay in an expedition led by Prince Blueblood III. According to his highly questionable memoirs, he faced cannibalistic zebra pygmies, a swarm of highly territorial griffins, and one Ursa Major. Despite his adherent claims, no proof has ever been found to substantiate. Upon his return to Canterlot, Pop denied his claim to the entire region, giving him a small part of the upper river valley as reward for his discovery. I didn't really listen to the playback. I had seen a sword, but not just any sword, a sword 20% cooler than any sword I could have ever imagined. A sword made of white silver metal and decorated with etched unicorns. One look at it hanging in its case, and I knew that my self-defense concerns would soon be dealt with. I hammered the case with my hooves. I levitated the heaviest thing I could even manage and smashed it over and over again. I even tried to pick the lock, but it was so complicated that I couldn't even get the bobby pin in to try. Figures. There were 4 pictures that I found interesting. The display was titled, "How the Hoofington Volcano Destroyed the Zebras." The first showed a large volcano with a large zebra city at its base. The second showed the half of the mountain blowing out over the zebra city. The third had a large crater sitting at the base of the granite dome, the depression filled with lava. The last showed a filled crater cooled, with the river flowing into 2 branches around it. Ash coated everything in sight. It looked like the wasteland. Stepping into the next room, I froze at the sight of the alicorn. She stared down at me in complete contempt, horn leveled to strike me down. Then, as the lights rose, my heartbeat slowed as I saw it was just another statue. The tiny hamlet of Hoofington played a small role in Nightmare Moon's first appearance. Local lore suggests that prior to her challenging her supremacy over Equestria, Nightmare Moon was spotted many times. While Manhattan academics strongly dispute these claims, sufficient eyewitness. I really didn't see anything else interesting in this section. Certainly nothing valuable. I trotted into the next section. The lights flickered on several times. This room had more pictures on its wall and a small diorama in the middle. The diorama depicted a large knob of granite I'd seen outside. the town at space and some of the surrounding area. There were several smaller communities on either side of the Forked River. Over time, Hoofington developed from a rural to an academic and cultural center for Equestria. Many of the prestigious continue to operate out of Canterlot. Hoofington specialized in higher learning and technological advancement. Numerous doctors, scientists, alchemists, and other academic flocks. Piece of Hoofington. Lots of pictures of big brick buildings with white pillars coming out front. Yawn. Lots of eggheads. Got it. The next room certainly wasn't boring. It was made to look like it was on fire. The crackling music died, replaced by the sound of flaming timber. The burning of Hoofington will often be remembered as the night that sealed the city onto the road of total war. Following the unprecedented slaughter of innocent students at Littlehorn, the Zebras wasted no time in committing another atrocity with a surprise attack on the city. Though it had never before been a target in the wider campaign, Zebra commandos penetrated deep within Equestria to bring war to Hoofington. With incendiary explosives, the Zebras ignited a firestorm that destroyed the city's heart. An estimated 900 innocent lives were lost trying to flee from the flames that consumed the island. Suddenly there was a pop, and then a whirling noise from overhead. I jumped back, expecting a killer turret or something. Instead, a projector started to shine an image of a blank square on the wall. The image was so grainy that I couldn't make much out. Burned buildings on the sides, a pony crowd looking up at some sort of platform, and some pony addressing them. Then a buck's staticky, crackling voice started to speak. Today, Zebra kind has revealed its true face to all of Equestria. Not just in the killing of the helpless and innocent foals of Littlehorn, but now against the unarmed pony citizens deep inside Equestria. They've attacked our places of learning, of discovery, of creation, and I will tell you why. Fear. Fear for what our accomplishments will mean. Fear for a future where their superstitions are left behind. Fear of what we are capable of. Well, I tell you now, they are right to be afraid. I call all of Hoofington, all of Equestria, and all of the free-thinking intellects of the world to come to Hoofington and make the nightmare of the Zebras into a reality. To build a city devoted to the victory of pony kind. To dedicate ourselves to unlocking the secrets of the stars themselves, to making our enemies pay for their crimes. I call to the generosity of our wealthy to help fund this reconstruction. For all that you are given, your reward is the advancement of our people. I call upon the working ponies to lend their sweat and muscle to make this city a reality. I call upon the intellectuals to give the genius and vision needed to craft a city of knowledge and light. I call upon the Zebras to look in terror and hatred. You thought to kill us through murder and secrecy. Never again. Hoofington will rise, and you will break your hooves and teeth against its foundations before we fall again. From this city we shall return the pain and blood that you visited upon us 1,000-fold. And when the future arrives, you will come to Hoofington in awe and wonder and shame. For Equestria, for Princess Luna, for all of pony kind, Hoofington rises. The crowd went wild, breaking into mass stomping and cheers of Hoofington rises, building and growing on each other. The cheers blended together into one massive voice, chanting in unison. Hoofington rises, Hoofington rises. The projector flickered just as I thought it was about to make out the buck's face. The speakers spat out some gobbledygook at me, then gave a static whine and fell silent. Oh damn. There was something severely wrong with me. I wanted to learn what happened next. After a speech like that, I could understand how the survivors of an entire city would rally together. Hell, this girl would give all for the hoof. Still, the effect was spoiled somewhat by the reality of knowing that the Zebras had, in fact, won against the hoof. Somehow they'd gotten a balefire megaspell into the center and blown the city apart. So much for Hoofington Rises. In the next section, I paid more attention to the faded and decayed pictures. One showed 4 parallel rail lines with a train on each, and building materials stacked high on every chain cart. Apparently, 10% of Philadelphia's output went into the next 2 first years of reconstruction. I supposed that was a lot. Another picture showed cranes and teams of Pegasi lifting slabs of stone and concrete into place. One picture had robots working alongside earth ponies as they dug trenches and underground tunnels beneath the city. A small corner talked about zebra ruins excavated in the reconstruction. The Manhattan Archaeological Society protested the destruction of zebra artifacts. Reconstruction Office's response: Hoofington Rises. The display that caught my eye the most was on the 6 ministries. There was a large color picture that had browned with age, but I could make out 6 mayors standing around a table, pointing at papers and designs, while a dozen of ponies looked on in concern and anticipation. The speakers crackled and popped before saying, "Following the kingdom's commitment for the reconstruction effort, it was decided that each of the new ministries would have a present in the city to enact with each other and help coordinate their efforts to protect Equestria. To facilitate this goal, the office of was founded in crackle with the princess." Office of what? I looked around and spotted a tiny poster showing a gray ring. Office of Interministry Affairs. Join today. Some pony needed to fire their poster designer. A rat roach squealed and followed by a wet pop. I looked down. I hadn't stepped on one. I froze and slowly panned my gaze across the museum. There was a whole lot more red bars in here. "Idiot," some pony whispered as my ears twitched. "I hate them damn bugs." A pony whispered right back, right around the corner from the sound of it. "You'll hate it even more if she bucks your head off. You lot get upstairs. The rest of you watch the back door. This is our best chance to get her alive if you don't screw it up." "Well, Celestia, still, I just kneeled down now and spread my back legs wide for the fucking you've delivered onto me." I felt strangely detached. No weapons, no guns, no armor to speak of, not much healing, and the museum was just full of ponies very intent on delivering me to Deus. So why was I smiling? 2 ponies around the corner, and just froze. There was a moment when their grins showed this to be the best night of their lives. I hoped their enjoyment, that moment, as I walked slowly towards them. My eyes locked with theirs as I turned my head and smiled sweetly. "Hey, boys." "Sweet Celestia's crotch. She's drunk," whispered one with a dual rifle battle saddle, groggily in astonishment. His companion grinned around the pistol gripped in his mouth. I winced at the rust I could see flaking on the weapons. I approached step by step, hips swaying as I took a pull off the bottle. Just a bit," I said as I closed the distance between us. Suddenly, concern began to strike them as I continued to stare. You stay back." The buck with the varmint rifles warned with a gulp. "Ah, scared of a girl?" I teased as I felt my cheeks go all rosy. "One sec. Still got a little left," I said critically as I swirled the bottle one more time and then poured the rest into my mouth. "Now, you come along quietly. No fuss. Nice and easy," the blue battle-saddled buck said as he swallowed. "You ain't got a gun, so no point in making this hard." "True, I don't have a gun," I said as I stood right before him. My lips curled into a happy little smile. "And you do make a good point," I purred as I stroked my hoof under his chest, making his eyelids twitch. "But there's just one problem with that surrendering stuff." I sighed with the bottle swaying beside me. Like you said, I'm just a little bit drunk. The bottle shattered as it smashed against the side of Pistol Pony's face, and I telekinetically drove every single shard as deep as I could, dragging the remains across his features and down across his throat, while my mouth opened wide and bit the bridle of the other pony's battle saddle. I hooked my forehooves around the rifle. Then my horns glowed again as I lifted the dropped pistol. The blue buck opened his mouth wide to yell for help and received a mouthful of gun. I spat out his bridle. And now I got's a gun. And I sent the back of his head across the room. You hear that? Some pony murmured. There was sounds of things getting noisy in some other display rooms. Hey, Joss! Haystack! You there? I rounded the corner back into the atrium and spotted a mare with a levitated sawn-off just 10 feet away from my doorway. 3 more stood further away. Nope, I replied as I sent the remainder of the clip into her face. Releasing the pistol, I swept the double-barreled shotgun into my magical grip as I walked around the platform holding the posed dragon skeleton. Unfortunately, the other 3 further in the room were a bit outside blasty range. While whiskey mathematics might have made 2 shells equal 3 dead ponies, their return gunfire definitely skewed my inebriated calculations. The bullets did nothing to the dragon bones, but the wires holding them together were another story. They started to ping and snap as the bones swayed. The 3 ponies advanced, firing wildly as I hunkered down, the dragon bones creaking ominously. I started to hum to myself as I looked at the skeleton and 2 pipes holding its base. 12-gauge shots took care of those. I shoved the skeleton backwards and the wires snapped apart, bones cascading down over the 3. The gaping skull landed right on top of one's head, the impact snapping the wire's spread jaws shut. One pony picked herself out of the jumbled bones, and I tried to bring her assault rifles to bear on me. I jumped onto the platform. She sprayed fire where I had just stood. I kicked 2 hooffuls of bones into her face. The flinch was all I needed as I jumped from the platform and onto her back, wrapping my hooves around her neck and smashing the butt of the sawn-off shotgun against her skull again and again. Eventually, something in her noggin snapped, or crunched, or something. She went down in a twitching heap. Unfortunately, the 3rd one pulled himself free and grabbed one of the bones in his teeth, charging me as I continued to shout the song. He had a nice long bone in his mouth. I had pieces of a shotgun. This needed to be fixed. I grabbed a bone too, a much smaller one. He swung, but right now I wasn't feeling too much pain from the impact that rose up on my hind legs. I hooked my hoofs around the bone in his jaws and pushed down as hard as I could. His eyes stared wide, neck strained back, as I brought my bone across his throat. My bone happened to be a 6-inch-long dragon claw. The ponies upstairs were rushing down, shouting. I could run for cover. Instead, I raced up the stairs to meet them. I rammed my shoulder into the lead buck, shoving him hard and pinning him between me and the boys behind him. The dragon claw plunged deep into his chest over and over again as he tried to duck his head enough to blow my butt off with his mouth-held revolver. Unfortunately, I wasn't going to let him finish that in time, so I stopped pushing and ducked aside. The shoved buck behind sent him tumbling down the stairs in a heap. The nearest of his 2 friends lurched beside me. Our eyes met, and I was the one grinning as I ducked down underneath him. I see Hoofington. I see Prance. My dragon claw swept up before me, sending a horrified shriek echoing through the air. Then I heaved my body upwards, flipping him over the railing and down into the mass of bones below. Darn, he was still squirming, clenching his groin and howling in pain as I grinned at the remaining buck right above me. He stood for 1 second, then jumped over the railing after his friend. Even with his newly busted legs, he tried to stagger for the rear exit. He was unable to do this, as in addition to his injured legs, that exit was now blocked by more ponies surging into the room below me. Take her alive, you idiots! She'd work more alive! Some pony wasn't up on the plot. Fearless leader, calling for my capture, looked up just in time to break my fall. Fortunately, while things under my hooves snapped nicely, the fall sent me staggering too. A unicorn swung her shotgun towards my head. I responded by sending the dragon claw as deep into the barrel as I could. She fired, and the claw whizzed back inches from my head as the back of her shotgun exploded into her face. My telekinesis took her ruined shotgun, pulled it from her grip, and spun it around, smashing the side of her head. Unfortunately, that still left 2 fully grown bucks ramming into me with such force that I slammed upright against the display case. "Cut her fucking throat! Hurry!" one yelled. "But we got her!" the other laughed. I grinned into the face of the smart pony. Then I looked at his friend with a nice knife that would have done wonders if he'd used it. My horn glowed, plucking the weapon deftly from its sheath and grabbing into its neck and stabbing it into his neck over and over again. "Freak!" he shouted as I leapt back, biting his battle saddle bit and bringing his rifles to bear. I cued sats, and my horn flared brightly as 3 telekinetic bullets slammed into his face. He staggered blind as he fired wildly where I'd stood. I cut his throat with the Bowie knife, feeling my heart pounding as I limped around the floor, stepping back past the buck squirming and curled up, protecting his precious bits, or what was left of them anyway. I searched the bodies and sweet Celestia suckle me, I found a second bottle of Wild Pegasus. Levitating it, I walked to where Busted Legs and Nicked Jules squirmed in terror. I took a drink and then sat beside them. "Sorry about that," I said as I felt a wonderful burn all the way down. "Still got him?" I asked the buck, clenching himself with his hooves. The pair looked at me in horror. "Damn, that was low of me. Heat of the moment and all that," I said, as I floated the bottle to Busted Legs. He took a gulp as he shook. "Now, I know we all need caps really bad," I said, trying to be the voice of reason. I gave Nick Jules 2 drinks. "But I need to live too. There's a whole heap of ponies that deserve my kind of trouble, and I'd rather you two not get it." I passed Nick Jules the few healing potions I had. "So I'd appreciate it if you could pass on to every pony you know that there is a safer way to get caps and keep themselves intact." I offered them both another drink. "Yes, ma'am," Busted Legs murmured. Nicked Jules just whimpered. I don't think he wanted to check to see just how bad his injury was. "Now, sit tight a second," I said as I went through to make sure I had all the guns, bullets, knives, ammunition, and dragonclaw that I could manage, as well as poking through the upstairs. I found a holotape recording and a terminal, but the latter defied me, and then locked me out. Damn it. Terminals needed to be easier. I did find a medical brace in the security office, and helped splint one of Busted Legs' busted legs. And I gave another healing potion to the other male. "Well, take care of yourselves," I said, rising with a groan. I hummed as I took what I'd salvaged from the bounty hunters and strolled towards the exit. The whole world was swinging as I sung to myself, and swayed in return. "She's a fucking monster," I heard Busted Legs say to the other. "Shut up! Do you want her to come back?" "Sweet Celestia, kill me now. Give me the bullet," I groaned as I sprawled on my face on my mattress. After having successfully scavenged the looted museum and the unexpected attackers, and receiving my belongings, I should have been quite pleased with myself. However, I'd returned to chapel in quite the state of amused inebriation. The Crusaders, having discovered my alcoholic melodies the night before, now proceeded to take vicious advantage of my hungover by jabbering to each other at an ear-splittering level. "1 bullet, 3 caps," the filly behind the counter declared firmly. "Otherwise, use your own. Priesty might put you out of your pain for free, but I ain't running a charity here." That young lady was going to run the finders someday. Priest strolled over with an amused look on his face. "Ah, the price we pay for the gift of Celestia's merriment. Heal me. Please heal me," I whimpered. "I did, when you returned, singing," he replied with a soft chuckle. What you're feeling now is your body teaching you that too much alcohol is bad. My body fucking sucks. I groaned, curling up and clenching my throbbing skull. I disagree, he replied calmly, and I opened my one eye to peek at him. Did he just make a pass at me? Was that even allowed? Regardless, I'm glad you spared these two. Your mercy speaks better of you than your wrath. Priest, I think I gelded one of them, I murmured as I sat up. He looked at the counter and asked for a bottle of water. To my dismay, she levitated it to him without even demanding payment. Her scowl told me not to expect the same treatment. Well, small mercy is better than no mercy, he said with a soft cough before raising. I'd suggest you get some air outside as well. Take a walk in the rain. Clear your head. How are your pilgrims? I asked, looking up at him, trying to ignore the headache pounding on my skull. Evidently, the telekinetic bullet spell packed a wallop on my noggin, which didn't help things much. I couldn't even levitate the bottle of water to my lips with the current focus. Leaving soon, he said, sadly. I guess he wanted more time with them. Sorry, I guess you don't get many out this way, I said as I held up the bottle with my hooves and took a drink. Water. No rads, no buzz. Sure, it kept you alive, but where was the great taste? On the contrary, I get all too many, it seems, he said cryptically before leaving the post office. More elusive bucks. Why can't they just say what's bugging them? Why is it so... Ow... I whimpered as my voice cut up with my hangover. Stupid hangover. Stupid brain. 10 caps for the water, the sales filly said sharply from behind the counter. What? You gave it to him. I pointed towards the door with my hoof. But you're drinking it. She took in a deep breath. 10 caps, please. She yelled at the top of her shrill little lungs. That little sales filly was going to own the wasteland someday. Every single cap would be hers. It was just a matter of time. I hated to admit it, but the air did me some good. The rain tasted metallic on my lips. It was probably unhealthy, but it also helped soothe my throbbing brain. Clearly, museums and other places of learning were unhealthy to ponies like me. I trotted up the ridge towards the chapel and then froze. That's a lot of headstones. Row upon row of marble knobs stuck out of the yellowed grass. I couldn't even begin to guess how many. Thousands? Tens of thousands? Row after row stretched back as far as the eye could see. I couldn't even guess where the graveyard ended, with all the long grass. This wasn't from the bomb. This was from 10 years of Hoovington being right in the zebra's crosshairs. I hesitated for a moment, then slowly walked across the field. A name, a race, a date, a cutie mark engraving. The shortest epitaphs on the small marble headstones. Loving father, caring mother, best damn bastard, surest friend. I'd never seen something like that before. Not the dead. I'd seen so many pony bones that it seemed like they just blended into the background. Only when a name was attached did I really care. These dead were cared for. In Stable 99, when you died, it was as if you simply never were. Death had been an annoyance because you were obligated to breed and train your replacement. The dead had been taken to the machines and recycled, along with all the byproducts of the stable. Recycled, reprocessed, mixed with the vat-grown algae, yeast, and fungus made into chips. It wasn't cannibalism. There was nothing equine about your meal. We didn't eat leg of duct tape. It was just the way things were. You lived in Stable 99 until you didn't anymore, and didn't think about it. I rubbed the epitaphs as I passed for as long as I could. Eventually, I'd thought I'd have to stare at the sky, then imagine long past ponies as I walked through the soggy grass. The chapel had seen better days. It'd clearly been vandalized several times, but some pony had fixed it up more times than torn it down, even slapping a coat of whitewash on the boards. I felt like an intruder as I quietly walked up the steps, There were 2 rows of thread-brown pillows on the floor of the congregation and a balcony along the back wall. Most of the windows were boarded up, but somebody had taken the time and effort to restore one window with a design made of colored glass tiles. It depicted Celestia raising the sun, perfectly matching Priest's cutie mark. I turned and looked at it. Over the door, a smaller window showed a calm and certain Luna. Something about the image was comforting. Painted on the walls were pictures of the 6 mares, the ministry mares I'd seen in the museum. Time had done what it could to destroy the images, but somebody had painstakingly repaired them. I gazed at the image of Fluttershy, feeling the urge to hug some pony. Rainbow Dash looked like some pony I'd want to drink with. Applejack reminded me of Mom. Pinkie Pie seemed off. Rarity? Yeah. Somehow a pony looking that good was simply wrong to me. And Twilight? I found myself thinking of P21. Priest was talking quietly to the 3 pilgrims. They looked horrid, emaciated, tired. One of them had a yellowing of her eyes and a twitch that convinced me she was on her way to becoming a raider, if Glory was right. Still, she wasn't trying to bite Priest's hoof as he touched her brow gently. A few other ponies sat scattered on the pillows, looking more like locals. A gray mare reading a ratty magazine about the princesses. A pensive-looking filly gazing at the stained glass images of Celestia. A large unicorn mare dressed head to hoof in black mourner's garb. She whispered prayers softly to herself as she rocked back and forth on her pillow. The 3 pilgrims stepped back away from the priest. They wept, yet they also appeared oddly happy. You can return if you want. There's no need to hurry. The priest told them with his collective voice. He was crying too, but why? He had said he had plenty of pilgrims stopping by. I suppose each one was precious to him? No, it's time. Thank you. Celestia protects. The twitchy mare said quickly. And Luna defends. The priest said in a tone of finality, and the pilgrims began slowly walking out. You know, I said with a small smile. Last night I was almost certain I saw Princess Luna. It was on my EFS and everything. Crazy. Huh. I held the grin that he didn't share. No, you didn't see the princess. She's gone now. He spoke in an iron certainty as he looked at the picture of Luna. Weird, I'd expected him to be more excited. Are you all right? I asked softly once they'd left. No, but it's the price I pay for virtue. Sometimes ponies just need a sympathetic ear and a kind word. I hope to convince one to stay a few more days, but they arrive together and they'll depart together. Clearly he wasn't happy about that, but it seemed pretty intrusive even for me. Your virtue? I asked him with a questioning cant of my head. And that's just being nice, right? I suppose some might think of it that way, he said as he looked at the paintings on the wall. Forgive me if I sound a little preachy. It comes with the job. He took a deep breath. According to what I believe, all ponies possess a virtue. It's an aspect of themselves that is their most pure and honest self. It's what makes a pony good, an integrity that no pony can take away from you. I swallowed, feeling oddly guilty. Well, that's easy. My virtue is getting drunk and causing huge disasters. I tried to smile, but for some reason my levity died as soon as the words left me. I mocked something clearly important to him. Strangely, it felt important to me as well. I'm sorry. He gave me a patient smile. Ponies who know their virtue can keep a sense of self. Have you met any ponies who seem together, even with the horrors that we all face? Bottle Cap, Keystone, Bonesaw, and even Dusty Trails stood out in my mind. I have, I replied. Ponies who know their virtue can embrace it and last longer in the face of adversity. They have inner strength to support their flesh and blood. He bowed his head. Unfortunately, virtue is not enough. It needs something more. More. Great. Now I really felt lacking. Friendship. A virtue alone is inevitably eroded. The wasteland will poison it, corrupt it into a dark reflection of itself. A virtue corrupted is a horrible thing, he said solemnly as he turned to look at me. Friendships that support and bolster the virtues of the participants empower them against any challenge. Friends united in a common cause are stronger than anything the wasteland can throw at them. I remembered how I'd felt when I discovered I was alone. And what about friendships of ponies who don't know their virtue? They may remain together, but there'll always be strain and struggle. I can't think of any friends lasting for long without knowing themselves. How can you be friends with a stranger? He asked with a soft shrug. I could think of many things to describe myself, but none of them were particularly virtuous. I really doubted stupidity counted. What's your virtue? I asked softly. Only Celestia knows my virtue, he said quietly, but from the look on his face, it would be all he'd answer. Maybe you didn't have to know it. Maybe you could just live it. I looked back at the door behind me. I hope your pilgrims will be safe on their trip home. They're not going home, he replied softly. They're continuing their pilgrimage. Now I frowned. You mean to other chapels? To Celestia. I stared at him for a moment, my eyes widening as they saw the sadness in his expression. How could you? I whispered and then turned and raced out the door. I looked up the road, hoping to see any signs of them. That I was wrong. Instead, I looked towards Hoofington. There they were, just starting across the bridge towards the city. Wait! I yelled, running as fast as I could towards the trio. My heart thumped in my chest as busted asphalt cracked under my hooves. My head be damned, I had to warn them. To stop them. Wait! Don't go that way! Stop! I screamed as my hooves clattered on the bridge. The twitchy filly with the yellowed eyes stopped and looked at me. The other two just kept walking. Please! Sweet Celestia, don't! I yelled. She was still smiling as the red beams lanced out across the top of the wall and swept through their bodies. Red energy swirled, consuming every inch of their being and turning them into ash. Celestia damned them. Her smile was the last thing to disappear. Footnote. Level up. New perk added. Tough Hide level 2. The brutal experiences of the wasteland have toughened you. You gain +3 damage tolerance for each level of this perk you take. Skill note. Lockpicking, 25.